Hey guys, Jordan Gusman here. I'm the national record holder for the 3,000, 5,000 and 10,000 meters for Malta. You're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
Jordan Gusman, welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thanks for having me.
We've been working on this one for a little while, and obviously those in the running community know, Geordie, that it's been a challenging, very challenging period for yourself and the family with the very recent loss of your beloved father, who it's very evident how close you were to your father. So firstly, condolences from myself and obviously the listenership of the show that know the journey you've been on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're in Coffs Harbour, Corindi now, back with the family. Came back from the USA to be with your mum and your siblings. How are you navigating things, mate?
Yeah, I've been good. The past couple of weeks have been really good. We waited a little while. We did the same kind of thing when my grandpa passed away, where we just kind of waited a little bit and, kind of let everything settle and then had a little service. And so we've done the same thing with my dad this past weekend. So it's been about 3 months since his passing, but we kind of just felt like that was the right thing to do for us and for him, and treat it more like a celebration of life, and for us to all kind of be in the headspace where, we could celebrate and do things more in like a positive manner, rather than like a traditional funeral where it's kind of a very sad setting. So we just had that this past weekend go on, and it was really nice. It was a little bit of a relief off everyone's shoulders to kind of say their final goodbyes. But yeah, I've been doing well. I feel very fortunate that my job has allowed me to come back and be over here with mom and spend the time that I have. I've been back home for almost 4 months now, and obviously still getting paid under my contracts and stuff like that, but haven't really been, fulfilling my obligations of racing anyway. And I did miss a lot of the majors this year, but family comes first, and there are more important things than running, which, it took me a while to learn, but I feel like the older I get, the more I kind of realize that there are more things, and so I'm just very grateful that I can, still be here and support my family as best I can, and still hold my job and still be able to get out the door and run and, obviously get paid for it. So,
Geordie, in 2019, your grandfather passed, Frank, and you've spoken openly about the role that he played in fostering yourself and your brother Johnny's interest in little athletics, and your father, of course, as well.
Mm-hmm.
They were both very proud men, right? And you've you both yourself and your brother have no doubt had no doubt given them so many great moments along the way. Any moments that really stand out with your grandfather on reflection, or your father when it comes to your running and athletics?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Maltese heritage side is my father's side, my grandfather, and so I feel like in 2019 especially. My pop passed away. He had pretty bad diabetes, depression, and then ended up passing away from cancer. And the last few years of life for him, we could see that he was going downhill, and I knew that he didn't have too much time left. And I've spoken about it before, but I kind of, had always promised him that eventually I would run for Malta one day. And I was kind of just saying it in passing, and I thought towards the end of my career, I'd end up running a marathon or something like that, and kind of just switching allegiances so I could say that I did represent Malta. And I thought that he would be around for that, and I thought my father would be around for that too. And so in 2019, I guess, when I won the Australian Championships and was named on the Australian side, and then I switched to represent Malta and was named on the Maltese side for the World Championships. That was a pretty big thing for me, and proved to myself that I could qualify as an Australian athlete. That's like the one thing I wanted to check off, I guess, before I did make the transfer, because we kind of could see that my grandfather was deteriorating a little bit, and I really wanted to switch and represent Malta for him. And that was kind of the last chance, I guess, was can I prove to myself? And I knew I was going to get a backlash from, the outside community. I didn't want to just look like I was taking the easy way out, so that was probably one of my highlights of my career, is just proving to myself that, I was deserving of a world championship spot. And then switching to Malta, and I didn't get to go to world champs that year. Unfortunately, I was hurt, but I did get to go to the small states of Europe championships and represent Malta there. And that got me in a little bit of trouble because my transfer actually hadn't gone through. So I kind of just went and competed in that championship. And luckily enough, my grandpa passed away not long after that. And if my memory serves me correctly, I don't think he even would have made it to the world championships. So yeah, I mean, I might have got hurt from running that competition, and I might have got in a little bit of trouble from the IAAF. But that was, a highlight of my career, because I just got to run for, my heritage country, and make my grandpa proud. And that was kind of the last race that he got to see. And little did I know, making that switch then, if he wasn't in that state that he was in, I mightn't have switched, I might not have been competing for Malta currently. And I would never have seen, my dad's passing coming. So to be able to represent Malta, and I know my father was so proud of that as well. That's a big highlight, just being able to switch allegiances and compete for Malta. And I know that some people still think that that's the easy way out, but I like to think that I've proved that I can qualify on my own accord. And it's been kind of a big thing of mine to not take spots. Like last year, I was offered a spot to the Tokyo Olympics, and I didn't feel like I deserved it, and so I passed up on that opportunity. So I only want to go to these championships if I feel like I'm deserving of a spot. I'm not just going to take a wild card spot. So I'm just really proud to represent Malta for both of them now, and that's probably my biggest highlight, is just being able to represent my heritage and represent their country of birth, and show how proud I am of that heritage.
Yeah, wow. Jared Clifford penned a fantastic article at the time for Runners Tribe about the switch, and went into detail. And you mentioned that you expected to receive a backlash from the community for some viewing it as an easy way out, but let's not forget you'd just taken out the national 5,000 meter title and taken down Stuart McSwain with a savage 300 meter to go thereabouts kick, and finished time
exactly
Sydney Track Classic of I think 13:28 or 13:29. Did you receive backlash, or was it just a few vocal minority people, or was there sentiment, or was it more of one of support and understanding? Or me?
It was a little bit of both, I guess. Like, there was definitely some backlash, and there's still there's kids in the US that, comment every now and then, and will say, he's taking the easy way out, blah, blah, blah. And they don't even know the story, they don't know any reasoning behind it. And you just kind of have to ignore that. I think that the thing that probably stung the most is the Maltese distance running at the start. And that's kind of something that surprised me, but in hindsight makes sense. They just thought that I was, coming to take their spots. And I think they'd had athletes transfer in the past from other big nations, and kind of didn't show the same respect, for Malta, and didn't show that they had pride in representing Malta. They just wanted to get the Olympic rings tattooed on themselves and kind of peace out. And so, I've kind of tried to be prevalent in the Maltese running community as well. Like, I coach athletes for pretty, little amounts of money to nothing sometimes. I always help out where I can when I'm there, either, working out with guys, pacing guys. There's competitions on, whether it be national championships or just local meets. I'm always trying to help out the guys and help them run PBs. So I feel like once I started to do that, and once they kind of realized that I wasn't just in it for myself, and I wanted to raise the profile of distance running in Malta, and kind of go beyond just wanting to get these kind of spots on global teams. I think that's when they kind of started to see that I was a good person at heart. And, you know, they loved me now for the most part. So that was the one that was the most surprising. But a lot of the Australian guys and a lot of my friends that kind of, because I knew that the younger, you know, generation wouldn't really care all that much. But I was more so like, because deep down I knew like it was a easy way out per se. Like it is an easier avenue to make teams. And I just didn't want like those high profile athletes that, you know, I was competing alongside to think the same thing. You know, I didn't want my training partners to think that, you know, I was just trying to make it easier on myself. And it's such a individual sport. I feel like it's so easy for training partners and stuff to feel guilt, and feel, you know, jealousy and that sort of thing. So, you know, I was feeling a little bit of guilt on my part, and I thought that, you know, it would come between some of my training partners and I just being jealous. And some of my Australian training partners at the time, and then some of my US training partners, they're two of probably the hardest teams to make right now over the 5K. So, I just didn't really want that to come between my training partners and I, but they were all very understanding, which was good. So.
Yeah, gosh, and then as you say, you can't predict the future, but to have that allegiance now, given what the events for your father and your grandfather, the timing of it, if it was going to happen, anyone would find it hard to argue that it didn't happen at the right time, given how important your heritage is to you, Geordie.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of opened the conversation. Athletics Malta had been through 3 different presidents at the, you know, completion of my transfer, but I'd been having that conversation, and I just kind of wanted it in the back of their mind because I knew that it was a lengthy process. But I started that conversation in 2012. So, you know, it had been something that I wanted to do, and I knew that I wanted to do at some point in my career. But obviously I was just holding off because I knew that I could make an Australian team. And, you know, I knew that I wanted to prove to myself and prove to everyone else that I could before I did that. And so, you know, it was in the back of my mind for quite some time, but I'm so glad I just kind of pulled the trigger and did it when I did. And I'm so glad that, you know, I went to that small championships, you know, against IAAF's best interest. They ended up taking all my results off me.
Gosh, controversy. Geordie, you know, you've touched on your high there, your career high, career low, and then the early days beginning in Sydney, but then Corindi, New South Wales. What's been the darkest day in your professional athletics running career? There hasn't been like a whole lot of dark days, I guess. Like, if people have followed along with Tinman, I would say all of last year was pretty hard to swallow, just because it felt like the whole of the running community had a lot of hatred towards the team, just with the way we went about, you know, firing our coach and that sort of stuff. So that was pretty hard. I guess just like missing teams has been like probably one of the hardest things. And that's why it was so kind of bittersweet in 2019 when I did make that team, because there was probably 3 or 4 teams the previous years that I should have made and just didn't. And that was every year I felt like I was ready. You know, I would show up to the national championships and feel like, you know, that was my year to make a team. And the Australian season is really funny because I feel like it's getting a bit better, but those like few years, I feel like the Melbourne Track Club guys didn't really show up to too many of the big races, and no one really showed their hand. So I felt like I was really the only guy racing most of the season, and I would run into some pretty good shape leading into nationals. And I think it was 2016 2016 was the Olympic year. I came second to Gregson in the 1500, and then ended up finishing, you know, maybe half a second outside the Olympic qualifier. And I went over to the States that year. And so I was pretty bummed about that, but that was my first medal at the national championships. 2017, I don't know if people remember, but I had like a mullet in the heats, and then I shaved my head completely bald for the final. And it was really wet, and I've moved around, and I think
Ryan kind of tried to follow my move and trip me off at the bell. And so, I felt like I was really in a good position to medal at nationals again and get my qualifier, and it wasn't meant to be. And then 2018, I showed up to the Com Games in the best shape of my life. I still think to this day, some of the workouts I was doing before that championships were, far and beyond anything that I've done in the past couple of years. And I ended up contracting, I think it was bronchitis between the heat and the final, like that day between. Somehow I got that, and I couldn't even run in the final. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. That was like the final part for me where, I decided that I needed to make a change. And all of those races were under Dick Telford in Canberra. And it was nothing that he did, but I just was so bummed that I remember talking to my dad and mom afterwards and thinking, I needed to make a change and do something differently. And I took a little bit of time off running after that. And I ended up running some really good PBs a few months later. But I took a bit of a break, reset, ran these times, and, kind of told Telford that I was going to go separate ways and look for something else. And I think that kind of just brought a new lease of life to my running, got me kind of excited for things again. But that period after Com Games, especially being a home Com Games, that was marked on my calendar for so long. And to not be able to even fight for a position at that Com Games. And I think I had I don't think I managed to run the A qualifier just because I didn't go overseas the year before. But I think the B qualifier was 3:39, and I think I ran that every weekend from January through to national championships in March. I had 12 B qualifiers or something like that. And a lot of them were solo. I ran the ACT record at 3:38, and I ran the whole thing by myself. And so I did everything I could that year, and it still wasn't good enough. And it felt like, it was just unfair at that point, just these such bad circumstances. And I was really down and out, and I didn't want to quit running, but I knew I needed to do something different. And that was probably my lowest point after that championship.
And that was an amicable split with Dick Telford, who we featured on episode 119 on a Coach's Corner episode. Sounds like it was amicable, and that's when you went to Colorado, teamed up with Tinman Elite.
Yeah. It was funny. So my girlfriend at the time moved to Melbourne, and it was all of a sudden she just got a job and moved. And this was kind of around the same time that, I'd sat down and spoke with my parents, and, they were such a big influence in my running. And they never came from running backgrounds, but, I just talked everything over with them. And so I sat down, and I don't know if a lot of people know, but out of high school, I was talking to Nick Bedeau. He helped me out a little bit. And then I forget what happened exactly. But we talked for a few years, and, I being, relocated to Melbourne, my girlfriend moving down there at the time, I thought, there's no better team in Australia than Nick Bedeau's team. And so I reached out to him, really, talked to him, and I was really excited about that. And I knew it was going to be hard to get on the team. They had such good guys at the time, and I was obviously an outsider coming in. But that was kind of my first preference. And then I'd met Drew Hunter in 2017 in Europe, and I just started talking to him one day. I think he raced something or other, and I messaged him, and it was the same time that I was talking to Nick. And he was telling me about the team that he just started and how he's going to move out to Colorado. And I said, hey, do you mind if I come out and have a look? And so I kind of just booked a flight that next week and went over there, and the rest is kind of history. So yeah, it was, I moved to Melbourne to try and join Nick's team, and then I ended up joining a team on the other side of the world.
And you've been part of that community now, Tinman Elite, and proudly flying that flag for the last, is it 3 or 4 seasons now or longer?
Yeah. I flew over there at the end of 2018. And it was funnily enough that that season was like the first season that Tinman started. And after my disappointment at the national championships, I kind of had a little bit of time off. And then around the same time that Com Games was going on, I kind of found myself running into decent shape, and I said, I'm just going to go overseas. And so I ran the usual US meets, Peyton Jordan, the Oxy Invite. And I had I'd created this singlet with my sponsor at the time, Saucony. It was a super retro, loud, Team Telford Saucony singlet that, none of the logos met the IAAF criteria. It was just super obnoxious. I had this ugliest mullet you would ever see. And all of those races, I just went straight to the front. And I guess that's kind of what the Tinman guys were known for at the start. It was pushing the pace from the front. And I think Sam and Drew were at all of those meets. And, just in passing, they would watch a race and be like, oh, that guy, he runs like us. He runs like a Tinman. And so then when it came time to me reaching out, they'd already seen me race. They knew that I was running well. And a lot of my PBs came from that trip. My 1500 PB is still from that trip. And I think I ran at Peyton Jordan, I ran 3:40 and 13:30, within an hour of each other. Just doing the same thing, front running. And so, I feel like they kind of really noticed me from that. But yeah, it was the end of 2018. I went over for my first training camp with them. So yeah, it's been almost 4 years now.
Gosh, and I think it's easy to gloss over what you just shared there, but you ran that 1500 meters and 40 minutes later 5,000 meters. And if I'm correct, that 5,000 meters, 13:20 is still your PB or PR.
That was actually, no. The next year I ran Peyton Jordan in 2019, and that was my PR. But that was the reason I wanted to go back to Peyton Jordan, was because I think at the time I'd run 13:42 or something like that. And I remember I would always, because I didn't have a manager at the time, so I was always entering myself, and I just always got put in section 2 or section 3 of those races. And so I remember winning the 1500, and I'd entered the 5K as well. And I think I closed in 55 or something like that and ran 3:41. And I called Telford and I said, hey, I won this race. And I was a little disappointed, and I asked him if I could run the 5K, and he said, no, I don't think so. And I was in section 2 of the 5K as well. And so I hung up the phone, I started my cool down, and they announced over the PA system, due to a few people pulling out of the race, we've decided to join section 1 and section 2 together for the 5K. And it was just too good for me to pass up. So I got my spikes on, did a couple of strides, and got on the start line. And yeah, ran a 12-second PR or something like that. And then, after that race, I thought maybe I'm a 5K guy.
Oh gosh, what a story. Overseas listeners wouldn't appreciate just how small the town was that you primarily grew up in. Corindi, New South Wales. Uncannily, I grew up in Grafton, just 40 minutes down the road, literally, from Corindi. I used to do so I do know it very well. There's been some spin talent out of that little town, including Cadell Evans. But can you paint a picture of what life was like for a young Jordan Gusman growing up on the north coast of New South Wales? It's a pretty special place, I guess, in many ways, when you get to travel around the world with your sport and actually call that home. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize how lucky I was to grow up here until, I've left and come back and left and come back. And every time it's a little bit harder to leave, I guess. It is such a beautiful spot. But I do feel very fortunate that I was able to do everything that, I've done so far, because, I'll go to the local store, walk down the street even, and, see people that I went to school with that have never left, that, have kids to someone else that I went to school with, and, they're working part-time to try and put food on the table. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what life comes down to for a lot of people from this community that I went to school with anyway. And so, yeah, I feel very lucky that, I kind of got the opportunity to do what I'm doing. And a lot of that was down to my parents. And, that's why I have so much pride in representing my dad's heritage. Was not just because, I'm proud to be Maltese, but just proud to represent him full stop, because, him and my mother gave me such good opportunities and did everything that they possibly could to support me. So yeah, as a kid, I was pretty much into every sport. I would surf. I did surf lifesaving, which overseas listeners probably don't know what that is, but a lot of swimming, a lot of paddling on a weird foam board looking thing. And yeah, so I did that a few times a week. I played representative soccer for the North Coast and then for the New South Wales side. And I was really good at that up until 16. That's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to play for Liverpool at the time because that was my grandpa's favorite team. And so, yeah, I really wanted to do that. And just kind of as I got older, I seen like the politics in it. There's always someone that was favorite for some other reason other than, their ability on the soccer field. And that's when I kind of got a little bit more serious about running. But yeah, I mean, towards the end of high school, my dad started looking for other avenues outside of just, my local community, my local little athletics club, because he knew that I was talented. I'd won a couple of state championships when I was younger over the 800. The guy that was coaching me at the time, who was great, and I credit a lot of my success to him. But he was just a school teacher, and not even at the school that I went to. That I think he ran 151 or 152 in the 800 in high school over in Britain. So, he would just kind of do some research on whatever Steve Ovett and Seb Kerr were doing and just give me a lot of that. But my dad started looking for, other avenues to kind of get myself out there. And he reached out to the New South Wales Institute of Sport. And, I was an 800 runner, kind of dabbling in the 1500. And they said, look, we don't really have much other than this 400 program that's starting up. And it's coached by Mike Hurst, who coached Darren Clark, who still holds the Australian record. And so sometimes it was every weekend, but it was usually like 2 to 3 times a month. My mom and dad would jump in the car, drive me down to Sydney, which is, 7 hours away with the old Pacific Highway. Yeah. I'd sleep the whole time, wake up at 9 a.m. in the morning, do my workout. We'd drive back to the Central Coast where a lot of the other guys were from. I'd do a gym workout there with them. And this was all new to me. I'd never even trained on a synthetic track before, and I'm training at Homebush with some of these top 400 meter runners that were a lot older than me, and they took me under their wing. I'd never really done any gym workout and that sort of thing, and they kind of taught me the ropes there. And then I'd jump in the car and fall asleep, and my dad would drive me home. And we'd do that every weekend. And I feel like that kind of opened the door for me, just with knowing like what it took to kind of get to that next level. And that was a huge stepping stone for me. I ended up running a PR in the 800 and the 400 that season. I met one of my best friends, biggest rivals, best training partners in Harry Schooler. And he would drive, a few hours from the opposite end down past Wollongong to do the same thing as me. And we were both the same age. And, we would take turns at winning state championships or coming second in the 400 and the 800. And that kind of competitive, friendly rivalry, I feel like fueled my fire for success. And then I'm not sure if you know the story, but unfortunately he passed away when I was 20. So he'd been out of running for a year or two and was really looking to get back into it when he passed away. And we'd spoke about running, the 4-minute mile. And I ended up breaking the 4-minute mile the same week he passed away, which was pretty special as well.
Oh, gosh, I didn't know that story. Geordie. But that would have been symbolic. And for those that don't know the old Pacific Highway, I recall that doing up and down at triathlons to Sydney from Grafton. And yeah, it wasn't 7 hours of pleasure. It was 7 hours of stressful at times, 2-lane highway. And you did that every
I know. Yeah.
That's sowing seeds. Mate, let's race through this performance round. Are you ready for these rapid fire questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Training session most loved.
6 by mile.
Training session most disliked.
Anything with hills in it.
Anything with hills in it. Favorite pre-race meal.
Pre-race. Usually I just have toast, peanut butter toast.
Peanut butter toast. How long before the starter's gun, Geordie?
Usually 2.5 to 3 hours.
2.5 to 3 hours. Bedtime, morning time. Well, we've just revealed your bedtime to the worldwide listenership. But morning time, what's that look like for you, Geordie?
Yeah, I normally wake up at 6 a.m. Have some peanut butter toast.
Peanut butter toast. Athlete you most admire. Who's that and why? Tough one.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I guess as a youngster, I always looked up to Kathy Freeman and Craig Mottram. But I would probably say Kathy. She was the one that kind of sparked that fire watching that Olympics. And I didn't think I noticed at the time or knew it at the time. But yeah, just like going back and seeing that replay of the Sydney Olympics was, the amount of pressure that she had to perform that day and got it done was something that, you have to admire, because the more and more you're in the sport and at a higher level, you realize it's so hard to do that. Yeah,
gosh, the weight of the country, literally, or the world, really on her at that age. Incredible. Toughest competitor, Geordie, you've ever raced. Who's that and why?
Toughest competitor. Honestly, I would have to say Brett Robinson. I hate that guy. Racing against him, he never has a bad day, or not when I've raced him anyway. He's a hard guy to beat. I think he's probably one of the only guys in Australia I haven't beaten.
Oh, is that right? The scorecard's still in Brett's.
Yeah, it is. On the roads anyway.
On the roads. Is there a mantra, Geordie, that you use typically when you're racing or competing?
No, not really. Just I kind of like when it gets to that point where it really starts to hurt, I just kind of say to myself, like, how great do you want to be? That's kind of the thing that goes through my head. Like how well do you want people to remember you? How great do you want to be?
That's powerful. Best recovery tip, Geordie?
Peanut butter toast. That's probably why I'm seeing you every week, isn't it?
No. Next, that's a segue into the next question here. And worst injury in your career to date? What's that been?
Funnily enough, I tripped over a small kid running to school and fractured my ribs, and it was the week I kicked McSwain at the national championships. That was my most painful injury.
So you kicked Stewie with fractured ribs?
Yeah.
And anyone that's hurt their ribs or fractured their ribs, I did a few this year at the start of the year, falling off my bike. It's horrendous. One word to describe your racing style, Geordie?
Idiotic.
Idiotic. How would you describe being in the zone?
The Tin Man like to call it flow state, so I'll roll with that.
When was the last time you were in the zone, Geordie?
A long time ago. There's been a few workouts, but I would say in a race, probably February. All
right. And final question, performance round. Geordie, what's the hardest session that you can ever recall doing? We know that epic sessions alone don't make champions. What's the hardest session you can ever recall doing in your career to date?
You want exact reps and splits?
Mate, if you can remember the splits, give them to us.
There was Telford was trying to kill me this day. But he would do, I don't know if you remember, like the quarters session that, the old marathon guys used to do. I think it was a D. Costello special. But Telford had all these variations of it. And so he had me do 6 times 400 with 200 float. And I think I averaged 60 and like 36s or something for the floats. Lap jog, and then 6 times 300 with a 100-meter float. I ran 42s to 40 off a 20-second jog, lap jog, and then I think it was 200s off a 100-meter float in like 26, 27, the same 6 reps, lap jog, and then he had me negative split in 800, and I think I went 56, 53 high or something like that. Yeah, that was just before the Com Games trials.
Oh wow! Hence,
I don't think I've ever been in that shape again.
Yeah, hence why you're referring to that as to date your career best shape. Wow, that's extraordinary. Geordie, you're out of the performance round. In terms of your general training philosophy, how would you summarize that? What's your general training philosophy?
It changes all the time, honestly. I feel like I'm very intrinsically driven, and so I really struggle with like holding back when things are going well, just because I get carried away. I kind of, and that probably goes hand in hand with my mantra of how great do you want to be. Is I'll kind of tell myself that in workouts. Sorry. And just put my foot down. And so I try to stay as composed as possible and try and keep things together. But yeah, I guess to date, my training philosophy is send it until you break or run something spectacular.
The physio in me makes me a little bit nervous, but the last bit anyway. I do admire the sended part. And Geordie, on that, it's been documented in the public domain, but you've been doing well, recovering from some persisting foot concerns with your sesamoid. That's going well for you, and you ran the Gold Coast 10K, a race that's near and dear to your heart, given that you're the record holder here on the Gold Coast, which is a huge event nationally. So what can we look forward to seeing you? Which start lines can we look forward to seeing you grace for the months and year ahead, 12 months ahead?
Yeah, I think so. I go back to the US in a few weeks here now, and then I'm back here for Christmas. So I want to try and get in one race while I'm back there. I'm leaning towards a half marathon at the start or middle of November. And then after Christmas, I'll be back in the US and I'll run the Houston half marathon. So that's historically been a pretty quick marathon. And I've run one half marathon, but I haven't really dabbled with those longer distances so much. But, 6 by mile is my favorite workout. I love the long run. And so I've always kind of had a calling for the roads and, those longer distances. So if all goes well next year at some point, hopefully a marathon.
Yeah. Wow. Is that an exclusive, Geordie, an exclusive mic drop moment? Jordan Gusman going to...
Yeah. I haven't really told anyone outside of my manager and my coach. So yeah, I'm either thinking London in April or Gold Coast in July.
Wow. Well, selfishly, I'd love to see you debut at the Gold Coast, but if London pops up, then we'll be still cheering for you.
Yeah. Well, it depends if I can stay healthy, I guess.
Strength on that.
Send it till you break isn't really a good training philosophy for the marathon, I don't think. So it's got to change it soon.
It's a hard master, the marathon. Geordie, strength and conditioning has always been something that it was certainly in recent years, I should say, you've incorporated with your Tinman Elite crew, Doug Adams, etc. That's something you value. What do you notice about the importance, or what have you learned about the importance of strength and conditioning?
Yeah, I used to, when I was younger, and I would always say to Telford, that he could just never break me. And he would always scoff at that and laugh. And he never did, but I got a hell of a lot of injuries after I left him. But yeah, I just kind of would get in the gym and, just do my squats and my deadlifts and the more power and the more weight, the better. And I was just I wasn't really instructed by anyone. I was just kind of being a guy in the gym, half the time I just go in there and do some curls and bench press and leave. But, as I get older and, I kind of progress out, to the longer distances, it's so important just to keep healthy. I feel like it's more so like the rehab side of things and the injury prevention side of things that strength and conditioning really comes into play for me anyway, than just pure power and that sort of stuff. And, I've always been like a pretty fast guy. I started off in that 400-meter program out of high school, and that's kind of predominantly what I was doing. So I always have that speed in my back pocket, and I don't really feel like I need the gym work to generate power in a training block. So for me, strength and conditioning is really just keeping me healthy. And when you stack it on a lot of miles and the intensity is bumping up and up each week, I feel like that's the one thing that, especially last year when I get into a routine with the gym work, that's the one thing that really helps me keep healthy. But yeah, it's really difficult with traveling. I would say that's the hardest thing, is trying to find like a routine that's pretty friendly with, very minimal equipment. So I'm able to like stay healthy and do it while I am traveling. And, while I have been here, like I feel like a lot of the times when I get hurt, it's because I travel to a race or I travel for something and I'm just out of my routine. So when I'm in a good routine with that strength and conditioning, I feel like that's really the only thing that keeps me on top of my health. So, I prioritize that a lot, and I find it just as important as the running.
Yeah, gosh, I often say it's the tax that runners have to pay in order to play. Geordie, every guest of the show gets issued 2 set questions. The first is this: if you could boil everything you've learned throughout your career to date into one single piece of advice to help the listener of this show perform at their physical best, what is Jordan Gusman's single piece of advice going to be?
Don't listen to anything I've said in this podcast and train sensibly.
Send it until you break. Park that one, hey, Geordie. And Geordie, every guest also issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Jordan Gusman going to lay down for us to take on?
I have no idea. Just give the Tinman workout a go. It's a staple, I guess, that I've done ever since I'd been on the team. 7 by 3 minutes, half a minute recovery, 7 by 30-second hills, jog down recovery, 7 by 15-second strides with 15 seconds recovery.
So 7 by 3 minutes with 1 minute recovery, 7 by 30 seconds of hills, jog down, 7 by 15 seconds with 15-second recovery. The Tinman Elite workout.
All right. Tinman Elite workout.
And if people take that on, listeners take that on, they can find you easily over on the socials, Geordie, on Instagram, anywhere else where people can follow the journey?
Yeah. I don't know my handle, but I'm on Strava. So if you do end up doing that workout, just give me a tag in the comments and I'll give a grading. I'll give it Tinman grading.
Brilliant. Your grading, is that a custom for the Tinman Elite crew, is it?
No, not really.
It is now.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you stopping by. There's been a lot obviously happening back here in Australia. You're only a few weeks away from heading back to the US. So thanks for carving out an hour after hours post your bedtime to share your highs, lows and learnings.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for looking after me while I've been back home.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Geordie.
Thanks, buddy.